What's happening right now, as of this second, is we are live streaming. We're live streaming to a YouTube channel that I've prepared and always do. Let me share that with you. There we go. And it's this one. It's called Ask Neil Pender. You can just do a YouTube search for it. Don't do a askneilpender.com. That goes to a different page. You can do that, and that's okay to go to that page. But to get to this YouTube channel, YouTube search Ask Neil Pender. And you'll come to what looks like this. And you're thinking 3 videos, that's not a lot. But you need to go over to this header called Live, because most of the content on this page are all the live streams for the last 2 entire courses. That means every one of these classes like tonight, I've done this twice before, live streaming straight to this channel. So there it is right there, the live stream version of tonight. I didn't do the Jason portion, but his slides, I see that question in the chat. Somebody asked, after class, can you catch up on slides that you might have missed? All of Jason's slides are available in your resources. Let me share with you the Google Drive. The Google Drive has lots of things in it. And here are the slides that he shared with you. Let's see. Okay, good. Yep, they're updated. So, oops. So you just need to go to that Google Drive link, which I will give you right now. I'll put it in the chat. And I've also put it in another place. So buckle up. I've got a lot of resources to share with you tonight. That's partly why I just started recording. So when you inevitably get overwhelmed, join the crowd. Everybody does. It's okay. You can just go back and watch this over again. And that's why I do this, for all the content. And you could even see some previous versions from the previous classes, and that's okay too. It's fire hose material, guys. It's like drinking from a fire hose, I promise. Here's the thing about this class. If you fall behind, even in the first week, it might be too far behind for you to catch up. It is almost impossible to dig out of a hole in this course. And what inevitably happens to 1 or 2 people in this course is they take it for granted. Maybe they think, oh, I'll kind of ease into it. And around week 3, they realize, oh my gosh, he was right. There's a ton of content here, a ton of material. Then they start picking up the pace. But that hole is probably too big to crawl out of. Fair warning, anybody who has taken this class before that you might run into out there in the wild probably tell you the same thing. So fair warning, watch out for that. Now, a lot of content, a lot of material, a lot of resources for you. So let me go through in a way that hopefully will be organized and kind of help your brain wrap around it. So the first thing is something called Notion. And I've already emailed you. Oops, that's not the version I want. Here, let's show you this one. Here we go. Notion is an online destination. Right. It's basically a place for people, basically an online classroom. And I've emailed you all with whatever emails you use to sign up to the course. If you didn't receive an email invite to this Notion room, let me know in the chat and I'll make sure to do that. So you're going to want to check that email, click through it, sign up, and several people have already done it. And here's what it looks like. Here's the little share field, and several of you have already done it, and I'll just need to, yeah, there we go. The thing about Notion on this live stream or on this share with you guys is I can't zoom in. I can't pinch to zoom. But I see several of you have said hello, and I do ask that you do that so I can see that it all worked for you. But what I've posted here on Notion are a variety of things. One of them is my contact info. Another one is sort of a list of 4 bullet points to read tonight, later after class, and just kind of be aware of some things. I post the link to the Google Drive. So that's updated. If you click on that link, it'll open up the Google Drive that I just showed you. It also has the Zoom link to join class every night. This is the last time I'm going to give you the Zoom link. You need to keep up with it. It's the same one every time. I will not be sending you an email every class day saying, hey, join us tonight. I'm not doing it. You're going to have to keep track of your schedule and put that into your calendar and say, okay, here's the link I need. But you can always find it here. Password, meeting ID, all of that's here. The policy and procedures book for the school is right there. And then a variety of things. Here's the real reason I do this Notion classroom. For all of these learning tools. And it might be this thing. I made this a couple of classes ago, last year sometime. This is something called a mechanics lien that has to do with someone doing work on your house. And if you didn't pay them, they could put a lien on your house so that anytime your house finally sells, they'll hopefully get paid, hopefully to them. But it has to be done in a certain order and within a certain number of days. And it's kind of a little confusing when you first learn it. So I drew out this little thing and a little explainer there. So I do that from time to time. And this is all an organic, sort of an evolving process. If you ever have questions, ask me. Please ask me questions. And that can be in the chat that everyone can see. It can be private. You could privately chat me. At the bottom of that chat window, you'll see maybe a blue box, hopefully. It says everyone on yours, maybe. And if you click on that box, it will give you a choice to chat to me alone. Now, here we go. I usually keep it set so that you can only chat to me, not to each other. Because people get tempted to start side conversations, and you've got to stay engaged in this class. So ask me questions whichever way you want. I'm going to give you my contact info in a minute. And you can text me, you can email me. And if it's something like this, hey, could you explain agency better? Do it maybe from a different perspective. This concept of agency, I think Jason mentioned, is the whole reason the Real Estate Commission exists. The Real Estate Commission exists, testable item, by the way. I will say that many times. And when I do, use your little notepad that you have out to the side, whether that's a physical one or an electronic one, and make a little note, make a list. Things Neil said might be on the test, essentially. Keep a page or two. And a very testable item is, what is the purpose of the Real Estate Commission? What is the reason or the purpose that the Real Estate Commission up in Raleigh, and some of you might be saying, what are you even talking about? You didn't even tell us what that is. It's a body of people. The Real Estate Commission board members, there are 9 of them, and they are the ones in charge of making decisions on how we run this real estate industry for our state. Let's see. You mean sorry, I'm just noticing in the chat, the link to the Google Drive, is that what the link to the Notion. That's what you mean. Send me thank you. Just send me the correct email that you want me to send it to. You can do that privately to me. In fact, I'll set it so that, it should be set so that it only comes to me. And I'll make sure it's the right email and get that sent out to you. So let me share something with you. And let's look at the forest view of this business, because that might help make some of these other things make a little more sense. When you go to the Real Estate Commission website, ncrec.gov, this is the governing body for realtors, for agents. Let me not say realtors. Let me say licensees, people with a real estate license. The Real Estate Commission exists to protect the consumer. That's the answer to that question I asked you 2 minutes ago. What's the purpose of the Real Estate Commission? To protect the consumer. Is the Real Estate Commission there to make sure that 2 different agents who have a dispute between each other, and one says, hey, I sold the house. No, I sold the house. I should get the commission. No, I want half of it. That is not what the Real Estate Commission is there for. They don't care. If you called them up and said, I think I should get paid, but this other agent thinks they should get paid for the same client, solve it. They're going to say, you need to change your attitude and go call someone else. It's not us. We don't care about your money. The Real Estate Commission cares about, did you take care of the client? And that's why this class is the way it is. What are you learning in this class for the next 10 weeks? The rules and the laws. That is it. It starts with the rules and the laws, and how the responsibility we have for our clients, how that whole thing works. And it's big. It's a big topic. Here's what you don't learn in the next 10 weeks. How to find clients. I'm sorry, that's much more interesting. I like teaching that way more, and you're going to like learning it way more because guess what? First step toward the whole money thing, right? So we don't go into that. How do you learn that? Your broker in charge when you join a firm or an online YouTube channel that you might find with free coaching or paid courses, or there's a million resources, but you're not there yet. You got to get the license so that you can do the business and then figure it out and learn how to find the business, find the people for whom to do it. So keep that in mind. Here's what the commission website looks like. If we scroll down, there's the main phone numbers. If you ever have a question in the business, once you have your license and you're curious, did somebody break the rules, break the law? You can call the real estate commission. Say, just curious, this thing happened. What do you say about that? And regulatory affairs is basically their legal department, and they will tell you, yeah, law was broken. No, law wasn't broken. Some of you might have some real estate experience, either through selling your own property or were licensed in another state, or you read a lot, or you have what I affectionately call the HGTV PhD. Who's got the HGTV PhD? You watch it all the time. You know everything about real estate based on what Hollywood says, because reality shows really are reality, aren't they? No, they're not. So whatever way you know about real estate, there are, oh shoot, I just blanked on my point. Here are the numbers. Here's regulatory affairs. Yeah. So if you have questions in the business, you can call them. Some easy links. Look at this one down here. If someone has a complaint, if a consumer feels like they were abused, mishandled, not taken good care of by a broker, a broker maybe lied to them. Maybe they told them it was gas heat, but it really wasn't. It was really electric. Whatever the complaint might be, look how easy it is for the plain good old consumer public to make a complaint. They click the button right there on page 1. They fill in all their little info, and they fill in all of your info because you're the one they're complaining about. And then just go down the line. 4,640 characters they can type in here, plus upload additional documentation. There are obviously a handful of complaints made every year. And the thing is, are each of those complaints valid? What some of you might have learned through your real estate experience is there are some things that, in fact, are not material facts that we have to disclose. As a broker, one of the biggest responsibilities we have is to tell everybody what's wrong with the house. If you know the roof leaks, can you keep that from the buyer if you're the agent that's helping the seller? In fact, you cannot. You got to tell the buyer too. And the person in the grocery store line that's a complete stranger, unaffiliated with the transaction. In other words, brokers owe disclosure to everybody. There's another testable item, by the way. Disclosure is one of 2 things that we have to give to everybody. Another one is an expectation of reasonable skill and care. Reasonable skill and care. We kind of need to know how to do this stuff. Welcome. You're in the right place to figure that part out. So if somebody were to complain against you because, for instance, you knew that someone had died in the house that you sold to them, but you didn't tell them, is that something the real estate commission is going to pursue and be mad at you about and discipline you over? The answer is no. It is not a material fact to tell anybody that someone died in a house. Who feels okay with that? Who's okay with buying a house and a week later finding out that somebody died in the basement? Raise your hand. Yeah, that's what I thought. Not too thrilled, not warm and fuzzy. That housewarming party is not going to be as fun. But it's just one of the rules. And it's called a stigmatized property. If somebody's died in the home through suicide or murder, That is not a material fact that a broker is required to disclose. Why is that? I can only think that it might be because sometimes I just don't know. But sometimes I try to figure out, why are those rules the way that they are? It is your choice. If somebody asks you, did somebody die in this house, and you're the broker, you have an option. You could say whatever you know, or you could say, I'm not at liberty to disclose that with you, because you've talked to the seller and the seller doesn't want you to mention it. Those are both fair answers for you to give. Now, sometimes an answer we give when we say we're not going to answer it is really an answer in and of itself. But what you can't do, though, even if you're a broker who's not required to disclose this, you can't lie about it. You can't say, no one died here, if someone did and you know it. You could either say, yes, they did, or I'm not going to answer the question, in some hopefully nicer, warmer way than that. So that's what I'm talking about. And somebody could have called them and said, she didn't tell me that. And the commission's going to say, so she didn't tell you that someone passed away there. Okay, well, that's not a rule that can be broken. And so it stops there. They don't even tell you that somebody called them complaining about you because you didn't disclose the death. You'll never know. And so a lot of complaints get thrown out because they're not a break of the rule or the law. So this is a good resource for you, the commission website. It's got some publications, and hopefully if you haven't done this already, make sure that you are using the speaker view so you can see the nice full screen version of what I'm sharing. But if you go to publications here, and let's see, there it is, and go to commission information. I'm just kind of showing you don't really have to do this unless you want to buy one of these, but I'm going to give you everything that you need. I'm going to give you all the resources that are in PDF format of what you need to pass this course. But if you like it printed out, you might want the paper version of this thing, the North Carolina License Law and Commission Rules booklet. It's probably about a half an inch thick, and it's composed of exactly what it says: the license laws, the laws about real estate. That's the first section if you were to flip through this book physically. The middle part of the book is the commission rules, the rules the Real Estate Commission has set forth as to how we are to conduct ourselves. And then the last part of this book is probably, I don't want to say the most important, but it's probably the easiest to navigate, because the last part of this booklet is called the License Law and Commission Rules Comments section. The comments section. It's about 28, 29 pages. Now, all three of those sections that are in this physical book are also over here in your Google Drive. And so if we go to the Google Drive that you'll see when you click that link, and go here where it says License Law Commission Rules, 3 PDFs are in here. It's each of those sections out of that book. And so the comments section, I think you'll get the most out of that. And so I put it first. But it's also the rules, also the license law. Let's look at what those kind of, just give it a little glimpse. So here's what the license law pages look like. Very boring, very legalese. It's actually from General Statute of North Carolina. If you were to do a Google search for GS, stands for General Statute, GS 93A-1, just a random Google search, and hit send, hit return, it's going to bring you here. There's a little study hint for you. If you ever see a reference to a license law or a commission rule, you can always just Google it. Whatever the general statute number is, boom, right there. You can also get to it via the syllabus, which I'll show you in a minute, because the online version of the syllabus has clickable links in it. And also, I think the comment section might. So here's what it looks like. The license law, and this one is, let me see. Yeah, 74 pages of rather dry, dryly worded, sort of boring. Any person while acting as a trustee under a written trust agreement, deed of trust, and blah, 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 must specifically identify the trust. Here's the good news. You don't have to know every single thing. So even out of these license laws and commission rules, there is a magical resource that was going to tell you which of these things you need to know to pass the final exam for this course. And that resource, anybody have guesses? What is that resource? Good question. Someone asked, will I be sending an outline of the units that match the syllabus? I will, and I've already given it to you in the Google Drive. I'll show it to you in just a second. Great question. I'm going to take off. Let's see. I'm going to change that to everyone. Now, when you guys are posting questions right now, you will all see them now that you've finished sending me your emails. Good. Okay. So here we are. The license law looks like this. Notice that this entire section of license law is called 93A. So whether you see it in the syllabus or anywhere else or in the comments section, if you see the numbers 93A, you're going to think to yourself, oh, that's one of the license laws. I can go find it if I want to in this section, in this PDF. So I would go ahead and download these 3 PDFs from this Google Drive, particularly the comments one. But let me show you the commission rules one first. Now, that's the middle section of that big book. And when you see the letters number 58A, you're going to think, oh, it's a commission rule instead of a license law. If you see 93, it's a law. If you see 58, it's a rule. Not a testable item, just to help you find your way around all the material. And so this one is, let's see here. There we go. It's 93 pages of of commission rules. And it's all kinds of things like how long do you have to keep your records? The North Carolina Real Estate Commission says that we have to keep all the paperwork, all the correspondence that existed throughout a transaction for every closing, for everything, not just every closing. Anytime you did real estate, you got to keep the paperwork. It can be electronically, it can be physically, you can kill trees if you want to, or you can do both to have redundancy. But the number that they're looking for here is how many years do you have to keep all those records? 3. 3 years, another testable item, by the way. And we'll get to all this in order along the way, but as I think of something that's testable, I'll remember to throw it out to you, hopefully, so that you can keep that list going. Okay, so that's an example of what the commission rules look like. And then finally, instead of worrying about both of those documents right now in this first week, here's the one I want you to pay attention to first. It's, again, the section at the back of that book. If any of you decide to order that book, by the way, it's $6.50, and it would be all printed. You could also print out those PDFs on your own, and you could have UPS store do it, or you could just order it from the Real Estate Commission. They send it pretty quickly if you like that. But here's what the law and rules comments section looks like. Let me flip it over to show it to you with Adobe PDF here for a second. Bear with me. Oh, there we are. Here we go. So here's the comment section. And what you'll notice as you dig into it a little bit is it's written more informally. So we saw that little glimpse of a license law, and read this one. These comments on selected North Carolina license law and rules are intended to assist licensees. That's you, potentially. You're going to get a license. That means you'll be a licensee. The comments are organized. You can already see it's much easier to digest, much easier to read. They just wrote it more like, hey guys, here's what's up. So notice as we go down through the comments section, which, by the way, is 23 pages, they reference a couple of general statutes. You could do a Google search for GS 93A-1, like I said earlier. So it's telling you where in the license law that you can find this thing they're about to share with you here in this document. And then as you go on further down, a lot of 93A mentions, but eventually we'll get to one that's a commission rule. So we'll see the 58 in a minute. Where is it? There we go. What you might see instead of the number 58 is a rule, like Rule A104. That's a commission rule. Here's a license law. And so there's a rule and a law pertaining to agency agreements. In other words, what documents establish the relationship between you and your client? Those documents are agency agreements. We need to have something in writing that spells out all of the parameters of our relationship with our client. Because if I'm going to be hired to list someone's house for them, and I'm going to spend my money, by the way, you spend your own money, taking photos professionally maybe, drone footage perhaps, measuring, having a professional measurer come in there and measure the house, marketing it, putting it on Facebook, all that stuff is coming out of your pocket. Maybe your firm might help, but it's usually expenses are on us. Well, what if they try to fire you 3 weeks in, not even giving you time to really see the results of your efforts? If this weren't in writing, they could do it. And you're like, oh, I just spent $1,000 or $500 or even $100, anything. I've already spent my time. I've also spent my money, and now you want to leave me? Well, if you have an agency agreement, they can't, because an agency agreement spells out the relationship between you and your firm. Let me be more specific. It spells out the relationship between your firm for which you work and that client. And it's called a bilateral agreement. In other words, both parties have responsibilities, and you can't just fire them. They can't just fire you. They might think so. They might want to, hopefully not, but they can't. Your firm would have to actually let them out of it if the firm chose to. So they could say, well, I want out. And your firm, your broker in charge, could say to them, how nice for you. You can't be out. You can't relist with someone else. You decided to hire us, and we're not letting you go that easily. I've heard of a firm before in real life, in the wild, and I'm not saying they did this correctly. I think it was probably more harmful than helpful for them. It was a luxury brand firm, and they had like a change up of management. So the current broker in charge left. A new one was sent up from corporate from Florida, and now they were in the place. And my friend chose to leave. She was an agent there, and she wanted to leave that firm for a couple of reasons. And she wanted to take her sellers with her. She wanted to take her listings. She had 10 of them, 10 listings that had hired her to help them sell their property because it was her, not because of the firm she was at. And that's the case usually. People hire and pick a broker because of the human that the broker is, not very often because of the firm they work for. Now, sometimes they do. If you don't have a reputation established, or if you're brand new, then all you've got is leaning on the weight of your firm and bragging about, oh, my firm does this and has had this many sales, because you don't have them yourself yet. And that's great. It's great to use the resources you have. But she was leaving the firm, and here's how the rules work that you need to know. The sellers can't just come with her. In fact, if we're leaving a firm and we want to go to another firm, we cannot call our clients and tell them we're about to leave. That would be breaking the rules. We could get in trouble. We have to sit quietly and wait until the broker in charge of the firm we're trying to leave reaches out to our sellers and says, hey, she's leaving us, but that's okay. We're going to assign your listing to another agent that's going to take great care of you. And that seller might say, well, I don't want that. I want to go with her. And the firm, in this case of my friend, said, oh, well, you have 4 more months in the listing duration before your listing term expires. Therefore, if you want to leave now, you're going to have to pay us X dollars. And I think it was like $1,000 or $2,000. They said, if you want to leave us and get out of this listing agreement early, then pay us $2,000. Not great for morale, right? Probably not great for Google reviews. They might just tell a couple of people that this big, bad, mean firm won't let them leave. But it is their right. The Real Estate Commission says it is the right of the firm to not let them out if they don't want to. Because that listing doesn't belong to my friend who left. The listing belonged to the firm she worked for. All these agency agreements between client and broker are actually between the client and the firm that broker works for. We don't have them. They're not in our name. They're in the name of whatever firm we work for. That is the one who owns those agency agreements. So hopefully you get an idea. That's sort of how deep we can go with some of this material. And so that's why it's so important to stay on top of this stuff. Don't fall behind. Continuing down the comment section here, let me go backwards. Here's my first homework assignment for you. And this doesn't mean I'm grading it. This is really all just suggestions to keep you on a good pace, to have this content in your head by the time we need it there for the tests. So it would be wise for you by next Wednesday, to at least read through 5 pages of this comment section. Read the first 5 pages. And it's going to cover the basics about why you need the license. Here's another testable item that's covered here. When do you need a real estate license? Tell me in the chat, do you need a license if you want to sell your own house? If you just want to put a for sale by owner sign in the yard, do you need a license for that? No, you don't. You see them everywhere. They didn't get a license because you own it. You can sell your own property. No license required. What if you want to help your sister sell her house because you are, an HGTV scholar, so you know everything about it, and you just say, look, I know how to make a Facebook post and put a sign in the yard and help you with staging. Can you help your sister get her house sold and help her selling her house? Can you do that without a license? Here's my favorite answer in real estate. So many things in this course and out there in the wild, in real life real estate, depend on things. It depends on stuff. And so in this case, can you help your sister sell her house and kind of be her agent? Well, it depends. There it is. Somebody mentioned in the chat, it's about the compensation. Is your sister going to pay you? Then you're doing real estate for someone else for compensation, in which case you do need a license. So that's the key. It's all 3 of those things. Doing real estate for another person for compensation. Don't let the test question throw you. When they write the test question, they might paint this picture. You're just helping grandma. Grandma wants you to help her property manage her duplex. And she's going to let you live in one side of that duplex. And in exchange for letting you live there for free, she wants you to find a tenant for the other side and collect the rent every month from that tenant. So let's go back through that 3-part test. Are you doing some real estate for grandma? Yep. Property management is real estate. That's one of the many things that falls into that category. Are you doing it for someone else? Yeah, it's grandma. Even though you love her, it's not all about strangers versus family. The test questions sometimes will throw it and paint this picture like, and it's somebody that you love that's close to you. It's irrelevant. As long as they're another person and you're doing real estate for them and they are compensating you, then you need the license. Is grandma compensating you if she's letting you live there rent-free? You bet. That's compensation. That's stuff you don't have to pay. She's basically paying it for you. She's not charging it. So you're doing real estate for another person for compensation. Yes, you would need a license to do that. Now, let's rewrite the test question. Grandma wants you to live in one side of the duplex in exchange for keeping the other side rented and collecting the rent. Do some property management for her, but you have to pay rent for living in your side. She's not giving you anything for free. She's not even baking you cookies. What kind of grandma is that? So you're doing real estate for another person, but you're doing it for free. Do you need a license for that? Nope. And that might cause a little cramp in your brain at first. You're thinking, but you don't. And that's all the kind of thing you need to know for the test. Just those little nuances like that, right? And you can see maybe how they could write the test question to kind of just give you that little flicker of confusion. So this course and your success in passing it involves the content, which is the biggest animal, but it also involves test taking skill. And I'm going to try along the way to help you see those little things and make those little tweaks and recognize how to analyze a test question so that you can win, not just by learning the content, but by knowing how to manipulate and examine and assess the question that they're asking. The test, by the way, I'm talking about, there's two of them. In order to get your license, you're going to have to pass two tests. The one that gets you through this course, the final exam, that gives you permission to then go sit for the state-sponsored or state-required exam afterward. That one I'm going to refer to frequently as the PSI exam, because that one you would take at another location at a test-taking center. Wherever you are, there's PSI locations all over the place. In Charlotte, it's off Tyvola Road. That's where I am, Concord area, Charlotte area. But in your area, wherever you are, you can just do a Google search for PSI testing centers. PSI doesn't only test real estate. They test any sort of field that needs testing, because they just have people that are proctors that make sure that you follow the rules, don't cheat, and all that good stuff. In fact, anybody have a drone or ever seen the drone footage? I know you've all seen that. It makes a great real estate video to have drone footage. Here's the thing, though. You can't just send that drone up there and stick that footage in to your house video that you made when they hire you to list it, because now you're doing it commercially. And in order to use drone footage for commercial purposes, you have to have a certification called the Part 107 through the FAA. Not testable for this, just giving you an example. PSI tests that too. So if you want to take that Part 107 to get your commercial authorization to use drone footage in real estate or anywhere else for money, that's where you would go for the test. Just like this real estate test. Let's see, how much of the final is similar to the actual exam, the structure? Good question. So the exam, both the class exam and the PSI, is composed of two pieces. A national portion that I think Jason mentioned, and the state portion. So that means the questions that you would see on any exam in any state in the country. Like, what's the definition of real estate? There's a good national type question that would show up on the national part of the exam. And then another one, the other part is the state section, like how many North Carolina real estate commissioners are there on the board? That answer is 9. Not every state, I would dare say, have 9 members. They might have 12, they might have 3, I don't know. I just know that North Carolina has 9. What are some other North Carolina rules? Well, we have specific agency agreements that are specific to North Carolina. We also, anybody bought a house or sold a house in the last couple of years? Oh, show me some hands or give me something in the chat. Anybody done a real estate transaction in the last couple of years? So you probably remember that weird thing called a due diligence fee. Do you remember that due diligence fee compared to earnest money? Those are two different checks that a buyer might write when they make an offer on your house. One of them is non-refundable that you get to keep as a seller. It's made to your name. And the minute this house goes under contract and they give you $10,000 of due diligence fee, you can spend it because you're not going to have to give it back, even if they don't end up buying your house. What? Yeah. So it got crazy the last few years, guys. I also teach continuing education classes, and that's going to be a whole room like you guys, except instead of 26 people trying to get their license, it was 26 or maybe even 50 or 80 people trying to keep their license, because you have to take CE in order to keep your license. So since I had a room full of veteran agents, I would say, hey guys, what are you seeing out there when you help a buyer make an offer? How much are you having to write the check for due diligence fee, that non-refundable deposit that buyer is giving to the seller once they go under contract. And I heard all kinds of numbers. Anybody have a guess? How much would a due diligence fee be, a non-refundable deposit that a buyer might need to give a seller to maybe convince that seller to please pick my offer, not the other 10 that you're considering? Which one? Yeah, not a bad guess. Danielle says 2,000 to 5,000. Jara says 1,000 to 2,000. And that's the way it used to be. Back in the day, and this isn't something that's been around forever. I've been in the business for 27 years. And back in 1996, when I started, we didn't even have due diligence fees. All there was earnest money. That is a refundable amount of money. We still have it. I'll tell you more about it later. But in the last 12 years, I think we started with this due diligence fee concept. And yes, back in the early days, I would tell buyers how much you need to write for this check. A rule of thumb is about 1% of the sale price. That was just a blanket rule of thumb. It is a negotiable amount, though. That's what you need to know. That's a testable item. Is due diligence fee a set amount or negotiable? It's negotiable. Most things are. Earnest money is negotiable. Due diligence fee is negotiable. What's that mean? Does that mean it could be zero? You bet it could. Are you going to have success with that seller picking your offer if it's zero? Probably not in this market, but it could be. So know that too. When you're reading these test questions, you got to separate your brain. The part that's like, yeah, but here's how it goes in real life. Nope, we're not worried about that. We need to focus on what are the laws and rules and why are they asking me this? You need to dig down into that more line of questioning. Don't get distracted by, yeah, but this is how I did it back when I bought it last year. That's not going to help you. You need to know the laws and the rules, and why are they asking you this test question is more important than what your personal experience might have been. So watch out for that. So last year when I asked this question that I always ask, due diligence fee, how much did you pay or how much did your buyer put down? Any guesses what the ridiculously high number of due diligence fee might have been? What some of those numbers might have been for non-refundable deposit to accompany your offer to purchase, hoping to use it as a way to give the seller incentive to pick yours instead of the other? Ooh, Deborah, nailed it. But yeah, 10s and 20s and 50s. I heard that all day long. $50,000 of non-refundable money. You're the seller. A buyer gave it to you. You're under contract, but maybe the buyer had the home inspected, didn't like the results. You weren't willing to fix the items, and they decided to not buy the house. Do you get to keep that 50? Yes, you do. And so Deborah got down and stole my thunder. But my favorite answer, the craziest one, was $400,000 of due diligence money that a buyer gave to a seller once they went under contract. Non-refundable. That means if the buyer's inspector says the roof's leaking, we want you to fix it, and the seller says, too bad for you, I'm not fixing it, and the buyer says, well, then I'm not buying it. The seller says, okay, see ya, thanks for the $400,000. That is how that goes. It could also be that the buyer has it appraised, has an appraisal done on the house because they're getting a loan and they want to make sure the house is worth it. That lender requires an appraisal, and the appraiser says, oh, this is worth $20,000 less than the contract price is that you agreed to pay. It's worth lower than. And so the buyer says, what? I don't want to. In fact, the lender won't even let them borrow the money on that contract price. They're going to have to borrow the money based on the low appraisal. And that buyer might say, well, then I'm out of here. I don't want to buy it. And the seller says, okay, thanks for playing. I'm going to enjoy your $400,000. It doesn't even go back to them over that. That's how big this is. Now, the question I asked when they said $400,000 non-refundable deposit for due diligence money, yeah, but how big was the house? What was the price? Fully expecting to hear $2 million because everything's relative, right? The price was $400,000. That's a buyer who has probably lost 8 offers in a row on other houses, and they were tired of losing. And they did whatever they thought it took to win one finally, right? It's also a seller that's probably not going to fix anything because they don't have to. That's how this business can be, guys. And so knowing these different things and these nuances is kind of what this course is about. So the comment section, read 5 pages of it. Let me show you the other. So I'd really suggest that you print this out as well, so that you just have it physically in hand and close by any given moment, and mark it up, right? Highlight it, draw, make notes, circle things, and pick out the parts in here that are the most important. Pick out the parts in here that are the most important. And now what you might have just thought to yourself is, yeah, but what's the most important? Here's what are the most important parts. Every time you open the book, every time you look at the comment section, every time you look at the license law section or the commission rules section, have this thing open too. You should read this before you read those. Because out of all that material, did you notice, by the way, here we go. Here is live and in person. Hi, that's me. Here is your book. Now, yours is the 10th edition. Ignore this. But the reason I show you the old one is because when I started teaching this 5 years ago is when I started teaching this, I had to read all this stuff myself so that I could teach it to people. Because when I took the course in 1996, you can all get ready to shoot me at the same time, 45 hours, not 80. Yours is 75. We make it an 80-hour course because we want you to have the time to learn it. But it was half what it is now. So I needed to get up to speed. And so here's what I would suggest you do is what I did to kind of get up to speed: highlight things, write in the margins, right? Clarify. Even if it's something over here that you highlighted, write it here too. The point is, you want this book to be marked up so that when we're about the week 8 or 9 and you're going to start doing review, that you can flip through this book and see the important stuff. What are these highlights? What are these notes? Straight from the syllabus. That's how you know which part of this book to focus on. Because look, 800 pages. Do you have to read 800 pages? No. There's the good news. You don't have to read this book cover to cover. But you do need to pick out which parts of this book are referenced in the syllabus, because the syllabus was written by the people that are going to give you the PSI exam. The Real Estate Commission wrote the syllabus. The Real Estate Commission writes the test questions for the PSI. Our end of course exam to get permission to take the PSI is written by us. And so we try to do it based on our educated guess of how that stuff is going to be, so that it tests you on the material, basically based on the syllabus. So it's not written, our end of class or end of course exam is not written by the Real Estate Commission, but it's inspired by them. I guess we could say it that way. There we go. Okay, so this syllabus, let's look at it. Let's break it down. This is your best friend. Oh no, my Zoom went away. My pinch to Zoom. So a couple things about the syllabus. You read this on your own, more homework, read this intro. But what I want to point out is the levels. You'll see these levels referenced throughout the syllabus, and then we'll take our break in just a second. Level 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 does not mean it's any more or less important. It just means to what degree or what level of depth do you need to go in the topic. So it just means definitions. If all the syllabus wants you to know is what's the definition of real estate, then that's going to be called level 1. They don't need you to argue it, to use comparing and contrasting. They don't need you to discuss the theory of real estate. It's just straight up, what is it? Give me the definition. Level 2 is the next step. It's more analysis. interpret, relate, compare, and then level 3 is like a deep dive. Math, calculations are all level 3 because you need to know how to move those numbers around. Let's see. Yeah, we're going to go back through the rest of this syllabus, give you some idea of the content and the order of things, and I'll show you this little thing that I made that kind of helps you stay on track with the syllabus versus the textbook. When we come back, I'll see you back here in 10. Got about 47 seconds to go. Make our way back together, please. Welcome back. Here we are. Let's keep looking at this syllabus. So you'll notice that they lay out the, oh, golly, I knew it. All right. Thank you. It's because I was talking to a client and I didn't know how that was going to go. She's a little bit volatile and you just never know. And I didn't want to like have this fire erupt from the phone into everybody's ears. So here's how many hours roughly we're going to spend in class on basic real estate concepts. 0.75, meaning 45 minutes. Property ownership and interest is going to be about 4.5 hours. That's about one night, right? Because each of these nights are about 4 hours, and that's not even total because it's 4 50 minutes and then 3 10-minute breaks. But for the most part, here's what you can expect of the times that we're going to be spending on these various topics. Now, notice some things. Just on this page, what are going to be the more in-depth topics? Obviously, ownership and interest. 4.5 hours. We go on down, brokerage relationships. 6.5 hours. That's going to take a little bit of both nights. A little over one night, right? Almost 1.5. Agency contracts. Sales contracts. Well, that makes sense. You would think if you're selling stuff, you'd need to spend a lot of time on the contracts. Real estate finance is another big one. Closing a transaction. What's involved with getting it closed is 8 hours. Property valuation is 6. Then we've got some little short chapters. And then we've got the big one, another big one, license law and commission rules. So again, what are we going to use to learn about the license law and commission rules? Each of those sections, the law PDF, the commission rule PDF, and the comments section. All three of those documents is going to be what we cover. Here's the thing though. The order of our course is pretty much this. Chronologically, right down, straight down through. This is what we're covering in this order. 40 questions of the state portion of the exam are going to be about license law and commission rules. 40 questions. It's like a big significant part of it. We'll see what the question makeup is here in a minute. So why wait till the end of the course to start it? And that's why we're not going to do it that way. We're going to talk about license law and commission rules tonight, whatever time we have left, tomorrow night. And then I'm going to intersperse it. It's in roughly 4 to 5 sections. The license law commission rules part of the syllabus. And so we're going to have covered this by the time we get to this point in the course. In 8 weeks or so, when we would normally land on this, those nights will pretty much be review because we will have already, I'm going to have interjected them throughout the course between now and then. And I want you to do it too. In your reading, always read some of the comments section. Always work on that because you don't want to cram this at the end. It's worth too much. It's just worth too many points. And when you look at the stats of people who fail, they tend to fail the state portion more than the national portion. Not by a lot, but a little bit. And in fact, sometimes I'll tutor people for like extra, like outside of class or not even people I ever had, but some other instructor says, hey, are you still tutoring? And I'll say, yeah, I'll do some one-on-one tutoring. $50 an hour, and I'll talk to them about whatever their weak points were. And I've had tutoring students that have tried 3, 4, 5 times. They passed the national part of the PSI, but they couldn't swing the state. And so, it just depends on your strong suits and what kind of time you spent on it. But I think the commission needs to move this earlier in the course, so I just do it myself because it's just too important. So as we go down through, here's what it looks like, each section. And notice this, big fat margins, lots of room to work. So print this off. Print off this syllabus, take it to UPS store, have them do it if your printer is not good enough. I hate printers. Printers are just so annoying. They just don't work half the time, and I usually just throw the thing away as soon as it starts giving me trouble and get a new one. But print 2 versions. The one is what you're going to use along the way. And you're going to mark this thing up like I showed you the textbook. You're going to write out to the side. Write the definitions, right, along the way. Maybe even reference page 308 of the textbook or page 23 of the comments section. Just again, the point is to make this syllabus into a study guide, into a review guide for yourself for 8 weeks from now. So use it, read it. Before you read any chapter of the book, read the corresponding section of the syllabus first. Then you'll know what to really focus on while you're reading that big fat 800-page book. Because don't let that book scare you. You don't need to know the whole book. You just need to know this much of it, whatever part of the syllabus is referencing, whatever part of the book the syllabus references. And then when you've marked this all up in the interest of studying it along the way, and then fast forward to week 8 or 9, you have a nice new crispy clean one. Go through it and try to write as much of it from scratch, right? As you go down through it, try to say, okay, now what do I know about severance versus annexation? And as you go down through that in the future, it'll tell you which parts you're weak on and you need to spend more time on. That makes sense? So just helpful hint. Oh, notice here, fruits of the soil, just some definitions or level 1. We'll get to that in the next week or two. And then level 3, there's already a level 3 topic. It's called fixtures. And fixtures are important. We need to know a deep dive version of it because it's very relevant for one thing. But fixtures are what we expect to stay with the house when it sells. That light bulb. Everybody is sitting in a room right now. You can look across that room and you can see probably personal property as well as fixtures. And whatever that was that Aaron just popped in his mouth was personal property, right? It wasn't a fixture. It wasn't attached to the house. Sorry to call you out just for fun. But the chair you're sitting in, probably also personal property because you could pick it up and move it. But the light bulb in the ceiling fixture, maybe it's a ceiling fan up above your head, that's a fixture because you would need a screwdriver to get that off the ceiling. You can't just unhook it or just pull it. For that matter, the refrigerator in the kitchen, what is it? You tell me, a fixture or personal property? I love it. Great answer. There you go. Yeah, it could be that your refrigerator is like a Sub-Zero built into the cabinetry around it. And if you would need a screwdriver or some tool to get it detached from the surrounding cabinetry, then it's a fixture. But if it's just in the hole and all you need to do is roll it out of there and unplug it, it's personal property. And I would bet that most of us have a refrigerator that's just personal property. There might be some people with a built-in, screwed-in refrigerator, but it's not automatically a fixture. It's definitely one of those things that depends, Thurman says. Good job. So you can imagine when somebody comes the day before closing to do the walkthrough of the house that's going to close tomorrow, and they were counting on that chandelier in the dining room to stay, but it's gone because it was big and fancy, and the seller maybe got mad about the lowball offer the buyer made and about all those things the buyer asked them to fix, and they said, well, forget them. I'll just keep my chandelier and sell it and get a little extra money to make up for how much I had to take a hit on. Sorry. What did the contract say? You can't take that chandelier down and expect to get away with that unless you allowed for it in the contract. So the question on the test might be, can the buyer take the chandelier? It depends. Is it in the contract that he can take it? If so, then yes, he can take the chandelier because it was excluded. Go ahead. Paying. Oh, so you're talking about something where they've borrowed money to have that item? Yeah, that's great point. And that's yet another thing in this course where it's like, okay, here's the basic rule, but here's the exception. So whereas a dishwasher, maybe you went to Lowe's or Home Depot and you fell in love. You were going to get a dishwasher, but you're like, oh man, that dishwasher matches that oven and matches that refrigerator. Let me just buy all of it. And I don't have the cash in my account, but I can afford $300 a month. So let me just borrow with the Lowe's card. And so now you've bought this kitchen full of appliances and put them in this house and you're making payments on it. And because of what we see here at the bottom, the Uniform Commercial Code of North Carolina, the fact that you haven't paid for it in full means that officially it's not a fixture. Even though that dishwasher is screwed into the cabinets, and if you just walked through and looked at it, you'd think, oh, fixture. No, you have to know behind the scenes that dishwasher is still being paid for. So that could be a test question item. And so they would talk about borrowing money and having this thing, buying it on credit. Then, yeah, not a fixture when it looks like it, but it actually isn't because of the fact that it's not paid for. Great point. Who was that? That was Tara. Is it Tara or Tara? Tara, got it. Tomorrow, I want you guys to do a little more homework for me for tomorrow. Just think of a 1 or 2 minute little thing to say. I'm going to give you guys time to introduce yourselves to everyone else. Just give us sort of where you're from, what background. I'll give you a couple little bullet points. Not some long 30-minute thing, but just give you a chance to introduce yourselves to each other so that you can maybe form some study groups like he was mentioning earlier too, and kind of see what commonalities you might have with each other. I've found that to be pretty helpful. Here's something else I'd like for you to do for me now. I've changed the chat to just coming to me, so this is confidential. Tell me in the chat, what of the following are you most concerned about in this course? Math, test anxiety, covering a lot of material in a short time, or maybe it's just been a long time since you've been in school, or something I didn't even mention. Tell me what concerns you have about this journey, this process. Yeah, test anxiety, the amount of material. Yep. There it is. I knew math was coming. It's very universal. I try really hard to give you some helpful hints on math and how to kind of compartmentalize it a little bit. And I'm glad that someone says don't want to fall behind. I'm glad we impressed that point early. So good. Now you know. Study schedule, that's great. No background or experience. You know what? Covering a lot of material in real estate with no background, I think that's actually a good thing, because I think people tend to just end up getting more confused. Especially, here's another one. Don't listen to any of your real estate friends about how to succeed in this course, because they might just give you advice on how to be a realtor or a real estate agent, and that may not necessarily help you get through this course. What applies out there in the wild doesn't necessarily get you to pass this class. Talk to me. And Jason mentioned some resources. I'll recap them in a little bit. Anything you run across on your own, if you're curious about it, let me know. Tell me, just say, hey, Neil, what do you know about this? I might not know anything about it, but I could take a look, or based on if I do know, I could say, yeah, that's a pretty solid resource, pretty safe for you to pursue that and use that as a resource. Sometimes it's trash. There's a lot of trash out there, and I'll try to give you warning if it's trash that you run across that won't help you. Yep, I see you. I see you. Scheduling, fitting it into real life. You bet. So you're realizing now, I think, that you're going to have a serious self-discussion and think, okay, where am I going to steal my time from for this course? You're going to have to steal time. And so if that means less Netflix, if that means up a little earlier or home a little later, even if you go to a regular, other place for a job, maybe you do nothing more than take an extra hour to get home because you're sitting in the car in a controlled, peaceful environment where nobody that depends on you can bother you. And you just get that extra little bit of time without interruptions, right? Maybe it's lunch in the car instead of in the room with the buddies to get some more time in. And I think controlling your environment is probably going to be useful. But wherever you can find that place, and some of you are night owls like me, some of you are morning people, you're going to have to find it. But I would encourage you to figure that out. Figure it out now. Got to work on that, figure it out. And here's the other one. And some of this stuff applies once you're in the business too. Here's a big one. Learn to say no. Don't be so agreeable. And yeah, I can probably fit that in. Let me just help you out. And probably part of the reason you're drawn to this business is because you like people, you like helping people, and some of you maybe even be a people pleaser. Resist the urge. You got to prioritize. You can't do this business until you get this license. So some of those folks that are just used to asking you for stuff need to know to leave you alone. You might have to have a sort of a family meeting and say, look, guys, you need to consider me not around as much in the next 10 weeks. I need to put time and effort into this thing. I cannot fit it in around you. You're going to have to do without me a little bit. So you're going to have a real honest discussion with some people in your lives for best results. So that's the syllabus. Read that first along the way. How do we know which parts of the syllabus correspond with the textbook? And here it is. Again, this is in the Google Drive. And so if you see a Roman numeral, that's a syllabus item. If you see a regular number, that's a textbook item. So you can see chapter 1 and syllabus section 1 correspond. So that's the same stuff. 2 and 3 they stay pretty close together. 4 and 5 stay pretty close. Oh, but here's the first departure. Section 5 in the syllabus equals chapter 6, or unit 6 is actually what they call them. Unit 6 in the yellow textbook. So textbook 6 equals syllabus 5. Then it goes really crazy, and textbook 20 is syllabus 6. You're really going to want to lead with the names of the topics. You'll kind of drive yourself crazy with these numbers. But then 7 is corresponding to 7 in the syllabus, 8, same, 9 and 10. Then we get weird again. 14 and 15 in the textbook is 11 in the syllabus. Then we've got 12 equals 21. So you can kind of see it gets a little wonky there toward the middle. But here's a resource so you can keep track of it. Now, we've covered this. That's the license law stuff, 93A stuff. We talked about Commission Rule 58, or it might reference like 100 or 104 section. We talked about the comment section and the syllabus and the study guide. Now let's talk about this one. Here's the remaining item. And he referenced it, and it's actually the source of one of your very first quiz. He wants you to take this quiz in ClassMarker, and it's probably up by now, so that you can log into your ClassMarker and take the quiz. Again, it's not graded. I mean, it is graded, but it doesn't count toward you passing the course. All of this is just preparation for the course final exam. So don't sweat or stress over it, but this document is called Real Estate Licensing in North Carolina. We call it the RELINK, RELINC, because it's the acronym for this title here. So this Relink book, what is it talking about? The process. Not the laws and rules so much, but what if you have a question of how many questions are on the national portion of the PSI versus the state? How many hours are you going to get to take it? Questions like that, here's where it's going to be. All of those questions are in this book or in this PDF. And if we go down through, you can see the table of contents. Let me highlight a couple important parts to you. They do have a little bit of crossover with some testable material, like what is a provisional broker versus BIC eligible versus broker. I'll give you the answer to that real quick. Provisional broker is what you're going to be when you pass this thing the first time. Like when you first pass the PSI, you're going to be given by the Real Estate Commission a provisional broker's license. You can't sell anything yet because it's going to be inactive, and you'll need to activate that license. These are testable items, by the way. What's the first status, stage, or phase of your real estate license? Provisional status. You're a provisional broker first. Then later, after you've taken some more courses, you become a non-provisional or a full broker. So when you first get the license, you're provisional on inactive status. How do you activate your license at that point? You pick a BIC. A BIC means a broker in charge. You pick a firm. You choose what firm and you affiliate with that firm. You tell that BIC, hey, I want to join you. You've won me over. Tell the Real Estate Commission that I'm with you now. Now you can sell houses. Kind of. You got to spend a little more money, though. You're going to have to join probably the the Realtor Association. You're going to have to join the multiple listing service. You're going to have to get a lockbox key app on your phone so you can open up houses. And all that stuff, I'll show you with a slide here in a minute. It's going to cost maybe another $1,200 to $1,500. So start saving up, because this $500 for this course is not all you're going to have to spend before you can start making money. Fair warning. Going to have to spend a little bit more to finally get to that point of being able to sell some houses. We'll get to that in a second. So, provisional broker is what you're going to be. And I'm gonna wait to give you that when we get to it in the course, because I feel like I'm still in this phase of kind of showing you the material, so I don't want to confuse things. So as we go on through here, it talks about the test, the PSI, what's involved. Back around the COVID era, they allowed people to take the PSI through online resources, but they did away with that. As of last year, now we're back to having to go do it in person at the actual PSI testing center. What do you need to do as part of this process? You're going to take this course. You're going to pass the final exam for this course. Around the midway point of this class, around the time when I tell you to take the midterm exam, I'm going to say, now you should go ahead and apply for your background check or order your background check. And here's that information. When I do that in about 4 or 5 weeks, some of you are going to say, where do I go for that? And I'm going to say, it's over here in the Relink book that I told you about 4 weeks ago. And that's okay. I don't mind repeating. But it's this very specific one. If some of you just had like a new job or for some reason had to have a background search done, that won't work. You can't double duty it. You got to do this one. ncreccheck.com. Again, don't do it now, because once it comes back, it's good for 180 days. And you want to have enough time to give you those days, that time period to take your PSI, pass it, and then what's going to happen is you will have ordered this thing. It might take longer for some of you to come back than others. Why? It might cost some of you more than it does others. It depends on how many names you've had and how many places you've lived. So if some of you were in the military and moved around a bunch, some of you got married a couple different times and have a couple different names, they need to check all of that stuff. So it might be $20 for one of you, but $100 for another, because of what level they've got to go to check your background. If there's something in your past that you're like, oh yeah, there was that thing that I'm kind of not proud of anymore that was 20 years ago, and I kind of wish it would just go away, but it might be there that they catch. If there's something big enough that you're like, oh, wow, the commission might actually care about that, and I don't want to surprise them. If you're worried, and I had this happen with one person, she said, my husband's going to join me in the business. He got convicted of something. He committed a felony way back in the past. Here's the thing. It's called a petition for, oh, shoot. Now I just forgot the word. What is it? A predetermination. Petition for predetermination. And I think it's $45. You go on the Real Estate Commission website, you find the form, you fill out the form, pay the money, and present the thing you're worried about. You just explain, look, this thing happened. I accidentally robbed 10 banks in a row on the same day, and I accidentally, ran over a dog and got convicted and blah, blah, blah. And you explain the thing, and they will tell you, okay, based on your explanation, you know what? You're wasting your time. There's no way we're ever going to give you a license. I would think robbing 10 banks in one day probably might, maybe. So that's the point. If you're worried about something that's big enough, you could get them to go ahead and tell you now so that you're not spending the time only to be turned down later. You'd be surprised, though, like DUI, is that automatic? No. Just because you had a DUI or maybe even multiples, that's not necessarily a reason that they're not going to give you a license. And that's not all that uncommon, that somebody might have one of those lingering back there somewhere. So don't just think you've got to be pristine with the past. But if you're worried about it, that's how you can just get to the bottom of it, so you'll know if you're spending your time for no reason or not. Here's another part of this book that's useful. Oh, well, this is nice. Here's the thing about the test questions. It's not going to be that whole thing about Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2. Is it all of them? Is it neither of them? Is it one of them? It's just straight up A, B, C, D. Pick one. Just straight multiple choice. No fill in the blank. Nothing crazy. It's just, here's a couple examples of what a test question might look like. Primary body of law governing the relationship between a seller of real estate and the broker with whom the seller lists the property is known as the what? And so getting this question correct is just going to be a matter of knowing definitions. You would have already learned what the statute of frauds is. You would have learned law of conveyance, statute of limitations, law of agency. Sometimes they'll throw something in there that sounds important that's really just a nonsense answer. But again, if you know all your definitions, you'll know which ones are not real. So in this case, probably process of elimination is going to do it just by knowing the definitions. Here's some big, bad, dirty math that nobody likes. We'll talk about how to do that later. Oh, this is the one that gets me. I take practice exams all the time just to kind of stay current and be able to make some up to help you guys. And I always mess up with when this word pops up. When they say all of the following are associated with the cost approach to estimating value of an improved property, except, and in my brain, I forget. I'm focusing so much on the big part of the question that I forget that what I'm looking for is the thing that's not the answer in real life. It's the answer on this test because they want to know which is the thing that's not the thing. So just learning how to split your brain into those two pieces and be like, okay, what is associated with the cost approach? That's what I don't want. And one thing that I suggest when we run into one of these accept kinds of questions, use your scratch paper. You get to have some. You're allowed to have scratch paper. Write this question, A, B, C, D, and then out beside A, is this true or false as to the cost approach? Is replacement cost a thing for the cost approach? Yes. Is depreciation a thing when it comes to the cost approach? Yes, true. Is net operating cost a thing? No, that would be a false. And then is lot value part of the process of the cost approach? We'll get to that later, don't worry. And so you've got A, B, and D, you've labeled true, meaning yes, they are associated with the cost approach. So it's going to be the only one that's a false. And that might help your brain to kind of keep track of all this stuff. If I get one wrong on a practice exam, it's usually one of these kind of questions. And I don't get them perfect all the time. So here's the other important part for preparing. 16 and 17. And what it is a chart showing the topics and showing how many questions are going to come from that topic in the national portion versus the state portion of the PSI. Don't forget, this whole Relink book is all about that other exam that you have to take after the class exam. That's the PSI one. But it's pretty consistent with the final exam for the class. So notice chapter 1, what is that, 14? No, yep, 19 and 20. All four of these chapters on basic concepts, property insurance, construction, and investment. Out of all four of those chapters, only 2 questions will be out of 80 on the national and 1 out of 40 on the state. Should you spend more time studying these 4 chapters than you do brokerage relationships? Probably not. That's why this is useful, because we all have limited time. How can we make the best use of the time? Start with the double-digit bigger items first. If you only have an hour, then make sure you're good on brokerage, because it's going to be 10 of the national portion and 11 of the state. And then here's the agency contracts version. Like, what forms do you use, in other words? 7 and 8. 7 on the national, 8 on the state. And then basic contract law. All of that is on the national. None of that is on the state portion of the exam. When you are taking the PSI exam, it'll be at a computer station. You'll go into the building, go into the room. You'll sit at a computer with like a cubicle. I've never done it. It's just based on hearsay. And you'll take your exam on a computer there, physically in person. The national portion is going to be first. And it will also be given to you first on the final for the class. Once you're done with all the ones on the national, they'll probably let you go take a potty break if you want, and then you can move on into the state portion. So it might be that you pass one but not the other. Whichever one you don't pass is the only one you have to retake. So if you pass the national but not the state, you don't have to worry about the national again. You can just come back and retake the state one. And I think it might be 7 to 10 days later. Those are spelled out here in the book. So that's how that works. Financing is all on the national portion, 12 of them, none on the state. And then look here on the back, a licensed law and commission rules. That's North Carolina specific. And so it's 10 questions out of 40 on the state portion and none on the national. You'll notice it says math, 8 questions on the national. So math means calculation questions. On the PSI, there will be 8 questions that you'll need to use a calculator for. But that doesn't mean there will only be 8 math questions. There's some certain way they can ask the question that's sort of math related, but you don't need a calculator. But 8 means calculator related questions. On that PSI, they score 80 questions for the national section, and they score 40 questions for the state section. What does that mean? Well, they need to develop future questions for future exams. So they're going to make you the guinea pig, and you're going to have to take some practice questions, and you won't know which ones are which. Here's the good news. None of that counts against your time, and it doesn't count against your score. You won't know, but it's not something that will affect your time or your score. And they might have given it to everybody, and everybody got those questions wrong. And they realize, oh, this is way too hard. Let's dial it back. Or everybody gets them right. Oh, we need to up the complexity a little bit. So that's what the 5 to 10 pre-test questions is talking about. So you'll notice 120 scored questions is on that PSI exam. What do you have to do to pass it? It's roughly about 71, 72% to pass the PSI. It's 57 out of 80 for the national, 29 out of 40 for the state. For the final exam for this class, you have to pass it with a 75. 75% for the class exam, this percentage for the PSI. And then another little nuance here, how much does it cost? So you'll get through this course, you'll take the course final exam, you'll pass it, then you will you'll contact the real estate commission and say, okay, I want to take my PSI. The commission says, okay, $100, please. You got to pay the real estate commission $100. Then they'll say, okay, now you can contact PSI and schedule your exam for another $56. So every time you take the PSI exam, it's $156. So the first time you do it, maybe you pass the national but not the state. All you have to do is retake the state. You still have to pay $156. If you missed them both and you got to take both national and state, $156. So it might be one or two of those along the way before you're done. Once you've passed the PSI, then you tell the commission is going to know. But they're going to look in your file and see if your background results came back. And hopefully they have, because they're not going to do anything until that happens. Once they have your background search results and notification from PSI that you passed, then they're going to take a look do like a character study, look at the background, see if there's any issues or concerns. All that goes fine. They're going to send you your provisional license on inactive status. That's the process. And all of that is what you'll learn when you read through this booklet. And you're going to need to read through this booklet before you take that pop quiz that he assigned you for tomorrow. To schedule the PSI appointment, click on the link, and it talks about some stuff related to that. I'll let you read that on your own. And then the last page of this book gives you sort of a flow chart, just showing the journey, the process that I kind of basically outlined to you just now. That's everything, guys. Those are all the materials. It's the syllabus, which is your best friend. Always lead with the syllabus. It's the study guide. It's the relink. It's the 3 Licensed Law Commission rule docs, the one specifically about law, the one specifically about rules, and then the comment section that kind of has them both in a more easy to read format. Read 5 pages of this comment section before next Wednesday, or however much you can, all of it if you want. It's only 23 pages, but you do have to really actively think about it. So you might want to take it in smaller chunks. So at least 5. All right. Now, let's go back to the Google Drive again. Some of this stuff you don't need to worry about right now, but the things you do are the comment section, which I also busted out to right here. So this is located in this as well as all by itself right here. So that and the syllabus are just really easy to find right on this front page of this Google Drive. The study guide is right there too. Jason's slides he shared with you earlier are there as well. The relink book. Oh, and then if you want to share contact info, you click on there, and Tara's already done it. So you can just go down through. Be careful. I think you might have ability to delete things, so don't delete other people's stuff. So just be extra careful when you're doing this. If you want to share your contact info, here's how you do it. We don't do it. It's up to you to give it if you want to give it. Later, we'll talk about square footage, what's your requirement in terms of reporting it, and how do you go about measuring. And so that's what this yellow book is about. And there's some forms along the way. You won't have to interact with all of these forms, but I will use them as references from time to time. And I'll say, take a look at the sales contract form 2T. We will kind of deep dive into that one, but that's where all those forms are. Now, Notion, I think we talked about it. That's where, where I'll put resources. And if you haven't yet, I think at the break, just this past, I emailed you, I sent you an email, whatever your preferred email was. So if you still didn't receive it, let me know. Now, that's not the one. Here we go. By the way, I'm Neil, and you're in pre-licensing, and we talked about renaming yourself. Tomorrow I'm going to have you introduce yourselves, but let me give you a little background. That's my lovely wife, Emily. Been married since 2019. That's my bad dogs, Capo and Grandpa. They are about 14 months old now. They ate that Christmas tree back in March. And I'll pause while all of you judge me for having a Christmas tree up in March. But you see, if you take the decorations off, now it's a staging item. So there's that. We're going to have to get a new Christmas tree. They're good. They're soft, but they're a little mischievous. I had two older ones that both passed away this past year, but they're standard poodles and they're smarter than me. I've been a broker since 1996, been teaching since 2018. I have my own little firm all by myself. I don't have anybody in it with me because that would be a whole other job to manage people. I am a BIC, but I'm only a BIC of me. I'm a broker in charge of myself. I have some alphabet that you'll notice here, SRES, MRP. Those are designations. And once you get out of this thing, get your license, get your post-licensing done that we'll talk about in a little bit, then you might want to start gathering up some of these letters. And not for the sake of having letters, but for the sake of what they teach you. SRES stands for Senior Real Estate Specialist. It kind of shows you how to help somebody in the 50-plus years of life because they have very specific needs and concerns. The boomers, right? They're worried about maybe a reverse mortgage that they might have gotten themselves into, maybe an assisted living facility, any sort of thing of like an empty nester kind of situation. So it kind of gives you some credibility that, yes, I know what you're going through. I know what sorts of concerns you have, and I want to specialize in maybe elder real estate, for lack of a better term. And so there's a million designations like that. PSA is something that you would probably want to get sooner than later, the Pricing Strategy Advisor, because it helps you learn how to figure out what things are worth and what they would probably sell for, because that's the biggest question that a seller is going to ask you. How much should my house sell for? And it's just gives you, your broker in charge will train you on that sort of thing, but it's a way to kind of deep dive into it. Real estate negotiation expert, military relocation professional, and there's bunches and bunches more. AskNeilPender.com goes to a Notion page. The reason I have that referenced here is that most of my slides reference AskNeilPender.com. I used to point it to the YouTube channel, but I don't do that anymore. But it's all still good and relevant to you. There's my contact info. Use this phone number and this email for texts and emails, questions that you might have along the way. I gotcha. Tima. Yeah, let me see. Did you give me, if you didn't give me an email already, go ahead and give me another one, please, and I'll make sure that Notion gets out to you. I literally have a listing right now with the Christmas tree up, and it's not because she's early. She just leaves it round the clock. He went over these rules and helped me. I'm just giving you advance notice here. These are reasons that I would have to maybe put you in the waiting room, and then those are minutes that won't count toward your attendance. Don't put me in the position, please. I don't want your ceilings or your floors or your foreheads or your chins or your dark silhouette up against a window. Be very aware of what I'm able to see. I need to see your features, that you're actually here and that it's you. So just to belabor that point a little bit, no vehicle attendance. We talked about that. It's a safety thing. The Real Estate Commission really cares about that. And this is my favorite one. You'll notice this gentleman has strapped a green screen to his back and a camera to his front, and he went down a water slide. And while I give him points for execution, I could not give him credit for the class. So no multitasking. It's so tempting, guys. CE is the worst because it's 100 agents in one Zoom room, all tempted to go handle their deals while they're trying to tune in. And it's like, this thing, you can't help it, but Zoom feels like a TV show a little bit. And you're used to doing other things while you're halfway watching TV, but it's not. You got to think, if my butt were in a seat in the same room, breathing the same air, how would I behave? Let's behave that way. Please don't recline back on the couch. It's just distracting. Please don't put on the makeup, take off the makeup, brush the teeth. All of those things are what breaks are for. You don't have to wear makeup. I'm not saying put on your best foot forward or your fancy clothes. And I don't care what your pants situation is as long as you don't stand up. But let's just be aware of Zoom etiquette. You know how that goes. The main thing is the video, the multitasking, and the car attendance, because it could result in this. Don't make me put you in the waiting room. It's just it's harder for everybody. All right. There's another email for me, the Go School version. If you want, that's fine. Either one. I told you about renaming. I keep you muted, but feel free to unmute and speak up, even if it's like, hey, dummy, you forgot to unmute yourself, or whatever, or a question. I welcome your questions. I might need to sometimes say, well, that's a question, sounds like very specific to a real estate thing you experienced that doesn't quite fit this topic we're covering now. So let me either answer it at the break or maybe a little later when we actually get to it. So I might defer, but I won't ignore. I don't intend to ignore. So if you feel like I'm ignoring you, keep trying. It's not my intention. Use the chat. We'll talk more about that later. Thumbs up are good. And the room opens. I think you can join pretty much anytime, but as of 5 p.m., feel free to start dialing in. And it would be great if you could, at some point before 5:30, go ahead and sign in, because it just helps me to launch right into the material. If I'm still having to cover material, I'll usually do review in the first few minutes. But if I'm having to try to talk to you guys and review and make that beneficial to you while still looking up at the people that are chiming in and coming in for 10 minutes, people still trickling in, it's just less than ideal. It's harder to do the work and help you. It's distracting. So even if that means at 5:20, you log in and you turn off your camera and mute and pretend that you aren't in the Zoom room for 9 minutes, that's fine. I'm not going to talk to you if you don't want to be talked to. I'm probably not even paying attention either. The room is there, but go ahead and log in so that we're not having to let you in once the class has started. All right. College level course. In that, it's a lot of material. Whether you went to college or not is irrelevant. Just know that a lot of material, this is going to require more than showing up. It's more than just showing up to class and listening to me or watching the videos, and that won't do it. You're going to have to put the work in on your own, a lot of it. 1 to 2 hours per hour of the course. So fair warning there. 17 actual hours you can miss, roughly 4 classes. And we keep track. We use Zoom. Zoom keeps track. I keep track, and I keep after every class, I have to keep it on a chart, and then I can tell you halfway through or later in the course, you might say, oh my gosh, I ended up missing how much more time do I have? And that's always something that some people ask. So it is tracked. Prepare in advance, and it's non-negotiable. You'll need stuff, pens and highlighters, and the dumb calculator for your test. You'll need a kind of calculator that can't like save words, just basic calculations, and post-it notes, things to mark that big fat book, paper if you want to. How to study before class. We'll talk about that when I come back from break. I'll see you back here in 10. Come on back together, please. All right, welcome back. Last hour, last 45 minutes, really. Okay, good. So let me show you something. Class marker is up, at least it is for me. And I'm sure it is for you guys too. You can, you should have probably received an email. I have several because it's for every class I've taught. And so you'll find probably the only one for you will show the October 25th through January 10th. And then there it is. It'll show you all of the quizzes. You could take them all right now, but it's not going to do you as much good as if you've already covered the content. So don't do any of them except the one at the very bottom. That's where the relink one shows up. For some reason that the system won't let him reorder them properly. But so you'll go down here to relink and syllabus quiz. After you've looked through the syllabus and the relink a little bit, click on start, and then it'll let you go down through it. There's only 15 questions on it. And looks like this. If you're involved in a real estate brokerage transaction in North Carolina and expect compensation for your involvement, you must have a North Carolina real estate broker license, true or false. Now, while the actual PSI and final exam of the class will never be true and false, for quizzing you, for helping you learn the content, yeah, you might see a true or false. But that's not what you're going to see on the final. So, and then he said you can do a little bit at a time, save and finish later and come back to where you stopped. Also, on the class final, as well as the PSI, you can skip questions. So use that. We'll talk more about test taking strategy later, but you skip those questions if they're, resist the urge to just beat it in your head until you finally get it, because you could waste a lot of time. I would say give it a good try. And if it's just something that's just not sticking and you're not quite remembering a thing, keep going. Skip it, come back around later. It might be that a question 3 questions from now could trigger something in your memory to help you with that one that you skipped. So it's good for momentum. Momentum is a good thing. That's class marker. Oh yeah, here we go. So here's a good process. Read the units. Units, if you see the word units, that means the yellow textbook, the chapters. There's a quiz in the back of those chapters. And looks like this. Oh, we got some decent light. I think you can see that. So in the back of the chapter, first thing I would do when I get to a chapter, let's see, where are we at? Here we go. Here we go. So chapter 3, you would have already looked at it in the syllabus. So read the syllabus section that corresponds to this first. Then look at this. I'd skim down through the words here. I would flip to the back of it before I even read it and go to here it is, key point review. The key point review section pretty much gives you a tiny little bullet version of the whole chapter. And so read through that key point review, and between that and the syllabus, when you actually read the meat of the chapter, it's going to make the pertinent information that you really need to retain stand out all the more. And that's what you're going to really want to mark. And you could do this a couple of ways. You could give it a good read through first, then come back and mark it. Or if you want to mark it as you go, highlight things, circle things, write them in the big margins. Again, with the syllabus always front of mind. What stuff in the syllabus? Oh, that's a word I just saw in the syllabus. Let me mark that. What are they talking about? What concept from the syllabus? Where is that mentioned in this stuff? That's what you're trying to do. And then once you've gone through the chapter, they have a quiz. And the publisher of this book is called Dearborn. So Dearborn makes these quizzes for the purpose of quizzing you on the chapter contents. These are not necessarily something like you'd see on the PSI or even the end of course final. It's just for the purpose of testing you on the content in the chapter. But I just told you that the syllabus is more important than every piece of the chapter. So it might be that some of these quiz questions are irrelevant because they're not even material that the syllabus has in it that you need to know. Sometimes you might run into something like, for instance, something called the Government Rectangular Survey System. You'll run into that in this next couple of weeks. You don't need to know a lot about that. There's a thing where you would have to figure out how to tell where the property is using the Government Rectangular Survey System. The northeast corner of the southwest corner of the this, of the that. You don't need to know that anymore. You used to, but it's not even a method of property identification that we use at all in North Carolina, so they took it out. You do need to know the basic terms like range lines, tiers, a township is 6 miles by 6 miles. I'm just throwing stuff out there. Just some basic things like that we'll get to in a little bit, in a week or so. But if you see a quiz question here in the back of the chapter about the fourth quadrant of the fifth quadrant of the this and that and the other, it's irrelevant because it's not something that they're even going to test you on, and it's not in the syllabus. What you'll also want to do is, there we go. Questions. Any question that occurs to you, keep a list of them. Let me know ahead of time or in class. And yeah, that's the main thing. Compare the syllabus with the material, whether the textbook or the comments section, whatever it might be. Form study groups, do the assignments. I won't give you homework all the time. The homework is pretty much getting through all this content, but sometimes I'll give you some assignments. There will be a midterm. There's a quarter term exam. All of the things that you have that you can expect for practice exams are in the class marker, so you can see those for yourself. Let's see. Oh, the back of the book, by the way, has some great resources. There we go. So it's not just all about the chapters. If we go all the way to the back, first of all, you'll find that the comments section is back. The Relink book is back here too, but don't go by this because these textbooks don't come out every year. The 10th edition, I think, has been out for 3 or 4 years, but the Relink book might come out and have changes every year. So let's use the Relink PDF. All those PDFs, use the ones that I gave you. Don't use the ones in the back of the book because it might be a little bit outdated. But what is useful back here is some math refresher, some stuff on how to convert math units. And one thing that's useful is how to go from percentages to decimals. 50% is what in a decimal format? 50% is 0.5, right? And we'll talk more about that when we get to some math. But if you're weak on that, and most people are, then Appendix 3, Section 3, talks about fractions, decimals, and percentages, and can kind of get you up to speed on that sort of thing. Oh, and then if you're ever trying to find a topic or a word, well, there's 2 categories back here, 2 sections. There's the glossary, which is all the definitions, and there's the index, which is, I want to know about fee simple absolute, form of ownership, well, then look it up and it'll tell you what page that phrase shows up throughout the book, just like any index does. So don't forget there's an index in the actual book. There's a glossary of all the definitions. And so explore that back part of the book, the appendices, the appendix section of the book this week too. All of these slides that I'm sharing with you are also in the Google Drive. Let me show you where those show up. Here it is. I got real fancy. I call it slides. And if you click on it, there they are. All my pretty slides. I made them, every one of them. And I made them pretty, mostly. They get a little boring in some sections, but I kind of got crazy and used a lot of graphics on some of them. There we go. Course materials, we've talked about a lot of this stuff, so I'll skip it. Relink book, we talked about that. Yep. When you take the PSI, you got to get a 71 on the national, a 72.5 on the state, because that's what it turns out to be when you have 29 out of 40 and 57 out of 80. But on the final exam for the class, it's a 75 to pass. 2 hours they give you on the PSI for the national, 1.5 for the state. We are pretty... I think we match that up. We do the same thing, if I recall, for the class. And once you have your application approved, you have 180 days to take that PSI, but that would be crazy. You want to take it sooner than later because the amount of stuff that falls out of your ears, out of your brain, gets pretty quick, falls out of there pretty fast. You can, once you pass this course though, let's say you got the job of your dreams that's not even real estate just about the time you passed this course, and you're like, oh, I don't want to take the PSI yet. I'm going to go do this job. And that job is like 2.5 years. And then you're like, oh, maybe I want to do real estate. This course, once you pass it, covers you for 3 years. You can take the PSI for 3 years after completing and passing this course. And yep, turn the syllabus into a review guide. We talked about the levels, other resources. There's a thing called Quizlet. Any teachers? Anybody a teacher or have been or a recent student? Somehow or other, you know what Quizlet is. It's basically an online flashcard website. And there have been people who have taken this course and made the flashcards and posted them on Quizlet. So look on Quizlet, do a search for... It would be under the name of the textbook, probably. You might try North Carolina Real Estate Exam or Modern Real Estate Practices, the exact name of the textbook, and you'll find maybe some Quizlet resources. I know you will. And you can use that, or you can make your own flashcards. You can make your own Quizlet version. YouTube's got plenty of resources. Prep Agent is a channel. My channel I told you about, Ask Neil Pender. And whatever you run across, let me know, so I can give you some insight. I might know that it's not any good, or I might tell you that it's great. Here's just some fair warning, extra information. How much are you going to make in this business? What do you think? Tell me what you think about how much you might make in this business. What do you think I'm going to say? You got me. It depends on you, doesn't it? I've known brand new agents that just had a connection because their spouse had an amazing corporate job and knew a bunch of rich folks, and they already loved and trusted them, and they just came into the business in the first couple of months with a bunch of people willing to let them help. Even though they knew they were brand new, didn't matter. They just sold a bunch of big houses right out of the gates. I've known people that took a year or more to get the first sale, the first closing. So what does it all come back around to? The thing that we don't even learn here yet, lead generation. Lead gen is really, once you get the license, your next major learning endeavor is going to be how to get leads. Now you can buy them. Zillow will sell them to you. I've heard that they are more and more diluted, not maybe as great and qualified as they used to be, and they could be expensive. I know people that spend $5,000 a month buying leads. Is that required? Not at all. There's a million ways to get business. You can knock on doors. People are doing that. everything comes back around full circle. There's just as many people who just now said, knock on doors, you're crazy. But the ones who do it don't have you as competition, do they? By the way, I'm not knocking on doors, but hey, it's valid. And it all is strategic, right? Pick a neighborhood that you want to be like the main go-to person in. Go start meeting people. That's what all this lead gen really comes back around to, having conversations, meeting people and staying in touch, getting an email from people, putting them on a weekly email list, sending them some short, very brief, mostly community-centered, not a lot of real estate, maybe 20% real estate, 80% local interest, so that they're not just, oh, she's sending me a real estate thing again. I'm not in real estate right now, not interested right now. You want to be front of mind when they are. So that lead gen is a big thing later. How much depends on your network, who you align yourself with. Are you going to maybe have a coach? Maybe the firm you join pairs you up with a mentor. You might have a mentor at a whole other firm that just likes you. How teachable you are. Here's the other thing. You will never learn it all. Just like an instrument. I used to use a backdrop instead of the green screen that I use now, and you could see I have hanging on the wall a bunch of guitars because that's my thing. If I won the lottery, then I'd spend a whole lot more time playing music, but you never learn it all. When it's music, an instrument, you're never where you want to be. There's always somebody you're jealous of how much better they are than you are. Same with real estate. It's always moving. It's always different. Even just the laws and the rules, but certainly how to get business changes too. 2 years ago, if you could manage to get a listing, then you pretty much were done, because just the market would bring 10 buyers to make competing offers and over asking price offers, and you look like a genius. And a lot of people bragged, look, I got it sold in 3 minutes. Yeah, well, your dog could have too, because it was just that easy. But now, not so much. It's taking actual work again. You got to actually do some stuff to promote listings now. And then leaping before you look. I'm the worst about procrastination in the form of perfectionism. I'm thinking, let me get it a little bit better, but what I'm really doing is procrastinating, because I don't want to make that cold call. I don't want to pick up the phone. I don't want to knock on the door or go out to take somebody to lunch. Just do the thing, right? It's all that sort of stuff. Perfection is the enemy of progress. Yes, good question. This live stream is immediately available on Ask Neil Pender channel on YouTube. So just go to YouTube, search, put in Ask Neil Pender, and it'll be there under the live section, not the video section. Here's the money, guys. Here's the nasty little surprise that some people might not have told you, or HGTV didn't tell you. You've taken this course. You're taking a course. You paid for it. What is it, like $450, $500, something like that, to apply for the PSI exam? And with the real estate commission, that's $156 per attempt. To renew your real estate license every year by June 30th, testable, by the way. When do you renew your real estate license every year? By June 30th. How much is it? $45. Post-licensing courses. Once you take and pass this course and pass the PSI and you're in the business, you don't even have to activate your license, but a clock has started ticking. A 18-month clock, countdown clock, is ticking on you. It's on your head and shoulders, and you have to take 3 more classes within 18 months of getting your inactive provisional license. If you don't take it within 18 months, you're going to have to take even more classes to get active once you decide to go active. So whether you declare yourself and pick a BIC right away or not, you still have to take 3 30-hour post-licensing classes within 18 months. Right? That's testable. We'll tell you it a million times. And those roughly, most schools charge about $200 a piece. So probably about $600 for all 3 of those. Annual continuing ed, they tend to run about $50 to $75 a piece, and you have to take 2 of them per year. So about $100 a year for continuing ed. MLS, multiple listing service subscription, so that you can see what houses have sold and get the stats on how to figure out what things are worth. and list a house that somebody has hired you to sell. Put it on the MLS. In order to belong to the MLS, it's $780 per year. In order to have that blue R behind your name, which many firms are requiring, and in order to belong to the MLS, you have to do it. But right now, there's some court cases. There's a big court case going on. You might have heard about it. Anybody heard of the big realtor buyer brokerage commission related lawsuit going on right now? It's like in court as we speak for the next another week or two. All of that has to do with stuff we'll talk about when we get to agency. Right now, the system is set up that the seller pays a commission to their agent, the listing agent. And then the listing agent shares some of that commission with whoever is representing the buyer, the buyer's agent. So somebody doesn't like that. Somebody's making the point and suing over this, saying, we think the buyer should have to pay their own agent and the seller should have to pay their own agent. Don't make the seller pay the agent that's helping the buyer, that's really against them in the transaction. There's a lot to be said about all that. We'll get to it later. So some of this stuff is maybe going to get shaken up, and requiring agents to belong to the National Association of Realtors might kind of become a thing of the past eventually. But for now, in this area, then to belong to the Realtor Association and call yourself a realtor, not just a licensee, is $580 a year. To set up your MLS, about $250 plus signs, lock boxes, business cards. A lot of times some of the bigger firms will provide you with a certain amount of those things or let you use their signs. But all of this kind of adds up to $2,000 or $3,000. So you're not doing this business for free every year. You're having to pay. And just to get started, it's the course cost, it's the application and exam cost, and then signing up and setting up your MLS and Realtor membership. Now, doesn't mean you have to pay $780 one time. They charge it to you quarterly for the MLS. And the same for Realtor dues. Well, the Realtor dues are one time. It's in January. This year, they expect a pretty significant reduction in people who are no longer becoming realtors, because some people who maybe didn't have a lot of success that they planned on having decided to maybe step back from the business, and that's a big chunk that they can save on by not being a realtor anymore. So what are your choices once you have a license? You could do several things. And as a brand new agent, one thing you might want to consider is to join a team. Once you get up and running, maybe join a team, because that team is going to give you the leads to work. So lead generation doesn't have to be a focus for you. They give you the lead. You're basically a buyer agent. You're a hired gun. All they want, because they have a bunch of leads that they're creating and generating, the team, is to hand one to you. You go drive that buyer around or meet him at houses, show him houses, get him into a contract, help him with the offer purchase process, get him locked into an under contract situation, then hand it off to the other department on the team called a transaction coordinator. Then they give you the next buyer lead and you go do it again. You don't have to do all that other stuff. You don't have to order inspections. They have somebody who does it for you. Now, if all you have to do is take and show property to buyers and get them under contract and then move on to the next one, you're not making the same amount of money per transaction, because they got to pay those other people involved who are doing the other parts of the job. And so, whereas you might have, like, if you just joined a firm as a brand new agent, there are some firms that are going to say, well, give us half of whatever you bring in, a 50% commission split. We'll split it 50-50 with you. If you earned $5,000 on this as a buyer agent, then we want $2,500 and you get to keep $2,500. Some firms might do an 80-20 split, give you 80% and they only keep 20. But if you're on a team, it's probably going to be less than the 50. You might have more like a 40% split. 40% of that $5,000 is coming to you because you don't have to spend your own money on generating the lead. So it's all sort of, what's the firm doing for me has a lot to do with what the split is that you're going to have to share with them. And so you'll learn that as you're interviewing with them. So being on the team, you could also sell new construction and just join a home builder and then sit in that model home and basically be a professional open house person for that very specific product made by that one builder. The thing about being an open house rep, new home sales rep, your weekends are not your own. Your weekends are probably going to be Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, Thursday, because they want you in that model home on the weekends because that's the high traffic period. Now, you get the right community and the right location, 6 figures would not be unheard of in not that short of a time, not that long of a time. You could probably get to 6 digits of income within a couple of years of doing that. And in certain neighborhoods, more so than others. You could be a licensed assistant for an agent to kind of learn the ropes and do things a little more than an unlicensed assistant can do. Or you could just do your own thing. Join a firm, but you do you. And you work for Allen Tate, you work for Remax or Keller Williams or name one, or a local small firm. And it's just you doing all of it yourself. And probably the vast majority of agents start out that way. So it's all, once you get the license, about lead generation. We'll talk about you tomorrow. Let's, in our last 20 minutes or so, let's touch on this license law commission rules stuff. Oh, good question. When joining us as a single agent with a firm, are you typically W-2 or 1099? Great question. This is a 100% commission independent contractor business. That means 1099. You are not salaried. Now, I think Redfin, the company called Redfin, might experiment, might offer a few salary type positions, but the vast majority of sales jobs in real estate industry is all commission based. Let's see, if a person decides to be their own broker in charge, how long after you're active broker does that take? So if you want to do it yourself, to be a BIC, you have to have at least 2 years of full-time real estate experience. So the very least you'd need 2 years full-time, or if you can only do this business part-time, 4 years. 2 years full or 4 years part-time. And there's some stuff you'd have to do to make all that happen that we'll talk more about. So yeah, the state portion of the PSI is 10 questions out of related to license law and commission rules. So I want you to start learning that now, and we'll pepper it in along the way. So usually on these slides as we go through, it'll look like this. I'll give you a level 1 that's called recall. Basically, what sorts of things are just level of like definition. Just need to know the definitions of things. So in this case, what's a broker in charge? What are the general licensing provisions? Who's on the real estate commission? Like how many people? And the categories of your license, like provisional versus non-provisional. There's some level 2, which we call apply or application, which is like the basic requirements, trust accounts, holding other people's money, what you can do with that license. And then the level 3 is what you can get in trouble for. That's on pages 5 through 9 or 10 of the comments section. It gets more into the like willful and negligent misrepresentation and omission, the things that we could be disciplined by the real estate commission for doing incorrectly. So who needs a license? We talked about that already. You're doing real estate for another person, even your mom, for compensation. 3-part test. All 3 of those things have to be happening. If you're doing real estate for yourself and you're going to pay yourself to do real estate for yourself, you don't need a license because you're not doing it for another person. Why would you pay yourself? If you're doing it for your brother and he's giving you a pizza and you're doing real estate for that brother for that pizza, then you need a license because he's compensating you. I mean, how are they going to know he gave you a pizza? That's an example of what not to ask. Don't get into those weeds. And literally people do. They're like, yeah, but anytime you're tempted in your brain to think, you're reading a practice test question and you think to yourself, yes, but you're probably starting to overthink it and getting off track. So just take it for what it's worth. That test question, read the question. Don't read into the question. Just read the question for the words that are on the page and go off of that. How many types of licenses are there? Do you need a commercial license to do commercial real estate? And who wants to do commercial? Tell me in the chat if commercial real estate, helping people with maybe office buildings or multifamily or land, is that something interesting or that you think you might want to do? So is there such a thing as a commercial real estate license? No, there's not. The same license accomplishes commercial as residential, as auctioneering, as property management, and as representing a renter and helping them find a place to rent. The same license lets you do all of those things. What's the difference? The Real Estate Commission says whichever of these things you do, make sure you have training and guidance in doing them. For instance, if you want to do commercial, you better be at a firm that has a broker in charge with commercial experience. The commission doesn't want a BIC with no commercial experience bicking or being in charge of people that are doing commercial, because what do they know? How can they guide them? That's really the only thing. The license accomplishes all of it, but your training and guidance needs to cover all that stuff. So just one license covers all this stuff. And it's called a broker license. Now, it could be a provisional broker's license, which it will be for everybody in the beginning. And how quickly could you get rid of that provisional word and make it non-provisional broker's license? How fast could you do it? We didn't talk about it. Just give me your best guess. Yeah, how fast do you want to take it? What schools are offering the classes and how soon, right? So you could literally stack it. And maybe in the course of, I'd say 3 to 4 weeks is a reasonable amount of time to still fit into your life and take 3 30-hour classes. I mean, that would be like tough, but you just would have done it for pre-licensing. So why not do 90 hours in 1 month? Or you could spread it out over the entire 18 months of time that they give you. So yeah, you could do it as soon as a month or two if you had nothing else going on and you wanted to make that effort, sure thing. So here are the categories. Provisional, get that post-class, all those 3 post-classes done. Now you're non-provisional or a full broker. And all firms have probably a mix. Some firms maybe don't even hire provisionals, but a lot of them do both. And so the firm is composed of both provisional and non-provisional courses or brokers. Yes, good question. Alicia says, are there tests to pass for each of those 3 post classes? Yes, there are. And I've taught them all. And the first day of those classes, I say, look, guys, you remember pre-licensing? How we're always wondering, is it going to be on the test? Well, in post-licensing, it's not quite the same. It's better because think about it. Let's just be practical. And I kind of do this with a little bit of jealousy. Where'd it go? Here's what it's going to look like when we're doing math, by the way. But how many active brokers do you think there are in North Carolina? Active North Carolina brokers, both provisional and non-provisional, human licenses. How many do you think? Give me your guesses. 10, 100. Oh, here we go. Serious guesses. 20,000. Keep going up. 50,000. Keep going up. 60,000 and keep going up. Oh, there we go. The overshoot. Last I checked, which I think was about a month ago, I haven't looked at the most recent source, which is a bulletin that's sent out in email from the Real Estate Commission every month. It's a bulletin that tells us, I don't know why I put the dollar symbol, that tells us how many licensees. It tells us who got in trouble. There's a disciplinary. I'll show you that sometime. There are currently 84,000 people paying $45 a year. Now, there's another, I think about 17,000 what they call firm licenses, like me. I have a firm license because I have my own firm, and I also have a human license. And so I have to pay $245 a year. So when we take 84 plus 17, that's $101,000, 101,000 licenses that have to be paid to renew every year. Oops. That's not nice. It adds up to 4.5 million. Don't know why that happened. $4.5 million just that the real estate commission earns by making us renew our licenses every year. So do you think they want you to get back out of the business? Do they want to make the post-licensing exam hard enough that you lose what you just got? Heck no. So it's not that hard of an exam. The 3 classes, I'll tell you about those a little bit later. The other 2 things down here, broker in charge and BIC eligible, those are about the broker that's literally in charge of everybody. Each office has to have a BIC or a broker in charge. And that BIC is primarily making sure that all of the provisional brokers in the firm aren't messing up, aren't breaking rules or laws, and aren't taking advantage of clients or accidentally hurting the clients. So that BIC makes sure you get trained up, make sure that you're hand in hand with them. The relationship between a BIC and a provisional broker, testable, by the way, needs to be very close, like hand in hand. They need to know your every transaction. If they don't, they are setting you up for failure. Because if you do something to mess that up, you break a law, break a rule, accidentally misrepresent something, tell a client the wrong thing, maybe run an ad improperly and commit a fair housing violation. And if you run the ad and it says this house is only a block from the Jewish Community Center, you've just committed a fair housing violation, by the way, because you can't show preference toward religion. In other words, are you saying that only Jewish people can buy this house? Well, it might sound that way to somebody if you talk about the Jewish Community Center in your ad. In other words, you'd rather say, hey, only a block from the community center or the gym, not the YMCA. It could be that you're not telling the world that you're a broker in your advertisement. And that's called running a blind ad, where you've just said, call Neil at this phone number. Now, if I'm trying to get people to call me, then strategically not admitting I'm a broker is the best thing to do, because nobody wants to talk to a broker, but they love to talk to the seller. So if I make myself out to be the seller, that's going to get the phone to ring more. Too bad it's illegal. I can't run that ad. I got to say, call Neil at ABC Realty and the phone number. And so that's the job of the BIC, to make sure that provisional broker doesn't screw that up. Because here's the thing. If a provisional broker breaks a rule or a law, the real estate commission is going to send them, if there's a complaint, an investigative email. They're going to send an email that's a letter of inquiry. Hey, we received a complaint. We think you're doing something wrong. And they're also going to send it to the BIC. The BIC will have to appear before the real estate commission too, if you, as a provisional broker, screw something up. So a good BIC is going to make sure that they are very much in tune with what you're doing. And a good BIC is going to also say, I want that to end as soon as possible. Please hurry and finish those post classes. Because the full broker, non-provisional broker, is not as much of a responsibility on the shoulders of that BIC as a provisional is. So that's why some firms don't even hire provisional brokers. They don't even want to deal with it. And it might be a firm that has like a very aggressive commission split. A lot of RE/MAX companies, firms give you a 95% split, or maybe even 100. You get to keep every dollar of that commission. But those high split firms like that probably charge you a pretty high monthly fee. I was at a RE/MAX once and I got 95% of the commission, but I had to pay $1,100 a month just to walk through the door and have a desk. So that's great as long as you're selling, but not so great when 2008 comes along, true story, and all of a sudden 4 deals that you thought you were going to close, all one by one like dominoes, fall away. and you had a 0 month and you still had an $1,100 bill with nothing coming in. That doesn't last too long. So that's why some firms kind of draw more levels of agent expertise than others. So broker in charge. What is this BIC eligible word? It can be, the system is set up so that if you want to, maybe because in your future, like you think in 2 or 3 years, I might want to start my own firm and I'm going to become a BIC then. So let me go ahead and become BIC eligible now. And so you do the same thing. You take the same course. It's a 12-hour course to become a broker in charge. So to become BIC eligible requires the same course. And you can just have this BIC eligible status attached to your license so that you've done the training, you have the experience, the 2 years full-time, 4 years part-time, all that's done and ready. And you're just BIC eligible. You're not the BIC, but you could be in just a matter of a couple of minutes. If your broker in charge for some reason wanted to take a break, they could say to you, hey, you're BIC eligible, right? Okay, well, let me hand you the reins for a minute. I need a month off. Can you be the BIC for the next month? They'll tell the Real Estate Commission by filling out an online form at the Real Estate Commission website, and they'll say, I'm no longer the BIC. I'm going to hand it off to this person. And since you're already BIC eligible, it's just a matter of completing that online form, and now you're the BIC. And so when they come back from their vacation, or it could be a negative reason, they might have forgotten to do their continuing education by the deadline of June 10th. And now, as of July 1st, they're going to lose their license, and all the provisional brokers are as well, unless they turn over their BIC status or their BIC title to someone else and let that person who is in good standing, who didn't forget to do their CE, that's another reason to have a BIC eligible person in your firm. And we'll talk about what it takes and what that's about, but that's what that means. So that provisional status is temporary. It's only good for 18 months. And once you get rid of it, you're a full broker. And here are those courses. You can take them in any order you want to. 301, 302, and 303. 301 is it's like a deep dive of agency. So if you might remember from the syllabus, that's chapters 7 and 8 that we'll be covering in this course. It's like a very thorough, intensive study of chapters 7 and 8 is 301. 302 is about contracts and closings. It's my favorite one, although it does have more math than the others, but hey, that's where the money is, right? The contracts and the closings, so I kind of like it a little more. And then 303 is kind of a weird one. It's a mix of all sorts of things, a little bit of commercial, a little bit of property management, and a little bit of like case studies and license law, this and that and the other. So those are the 3 courses, and they add up to 90 total hours. If you take longer than the 18 months to do those courses, then this is what you become. This guy is an inactive broker. He's not doing much brokerage. You can't, not allowed to. If your license is on inactive status, then you may as well not have a license. You're not allowed to do real estate, period, until you get activated again. So as a provisional broker, you have a lot more restrictions. You can't be independent. You have to be supervised by your BIC, and that BIC is very much accountable for all of the things that you do. Once you get rid of your provisional status by completing those courses, now you could go out and as long as you have 2 years experience and can be your own BIC, you could start your own firm if you wanted to. You can act independently. Your broker in charge is not as worried about you. You're individually accountable. If you get a letter of inquiry from the Real Estate Commission because you maybe screwed something up, your BIC will be told, but they won't get one too. They'll know you got one, and they'll say, well, have a safe trip driving to Raleigh. I'm not going with you because you're a full broker. I'm not going before the commission. I don't have to. Most of the time, for the most part, as a full broker, you're still going to need a broker in charge in order to do real estate. And we'll talk more about that later. With that, let me recap a couple things. We're going to keep on this track. There's we're probably doing about the first 4 or 5 pages out of the comments section in this little slide deck before we move on into chapter 1. So if you're reading ahead, which you should be, go ahead and do that. Look at the relink PDF. Look at the, what was the other thing? It's the relink. Yeah, that's the main thing for the quiz. Get your quiz done by tomorrow. 5 pages of the comment section. Be working on that between now and next week. But what do you need to do for tomorrow? Just the first 5 pages of the comment section. For next week, we're going to want to get on into chapter 1. So start working on reading chapter 1 and 2 as much ahead as you can, and then bring me any questions that you might have. Questions right now. Anybody have questions now for me? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what to look for on the updated version yet because I don't have it yet, but it's not very many changes. I'll have a list of what those changes are for you by tomorrow. I think I know where to get it, and I think it's available now. So I'll help you with that. But if you order the book as of now, if you're using the original 10th edition, I would just roll with it. And then I'll tell you what the changes are along the way. But if you still need to buy a book, then the book they're going to sell you is going to be the most recent version. Does that help? You're welcome. Anybody else? How we doing? Let me know if you didn't get into Notion. Here's my contact info again if you didn't get that down the first time. There we go. Yep. So jot that down, and otherwise have a great night, great day till tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow night, and I'm looking forward to it.